All right, recording started. Over to you, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. As Mike was saying, this is our 10th webinar. We've been doing these since November. So this is, this has been, I just want to say, it's been a really beneficial aspect of this project, is being able to talk to the residents, get their questions, share what we know, and provide that really clear communication. So thank you all, and I want to say in particular thank you to Dolores and Steve and Nancy, and a shout out to Trish, who was on the calls previously. A big thank you to them for agreeing to participate in these webinars. I don't think that this is something they probably thought they were getting themselves into, but we do things different here in Albemarle. So thank you all. All right, and so as usual, we're going to run through a lot of content, and then we're going to leave as much time as we can for questions and answers. We actually got a lot of questions by email ahead of time, so we're going to cover those and as many of the questions that come in now as we can. We are going to do our usual introductions, do some discussion on our role and the role of DHCD and Lumen and ABBA. We're going to talk about project and installation delays, and we're going to talk about fiber drop charges, and then we're going to move into our presentation from Quantum, and then to our Q&A. As always, the most important aspect of these webinars are the questions. So if you wave your mouse around, you're going to find that Q&A button. Click on that and put your questions into the Q&A function now or anytime during the presentation, and we will try to get them answered during Q&A. Today, we have my director, Mike Culp, myself, program manager at the Broadband Accessibility and Affordability Office, and then from Lumen, we've got Steve Brewer. Heather Lee is actually not with us right now. Dolores Carroll and Nancy Devaney. Nancy's going to be handling the bulk of the presentation later. Everybody's going to do their part to do some work on answering questions. So we've been through this before, but for anybody that hasn't been on the calls previously, I wanted to talk about what is VATI? So the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative is a program that's managed out of the Department of Housing and Community Development's broadband office. That office developed the VATI program as a way to get state and federal dollars into broadband expansion projects in Virginia, in the Commonwealth. These are public-private partnerships. For this project, the public body is actually the Albemarle Broadband Authority. Our office, BAAO, administers, we're the chief administrators for the Albemarle Broadband Authority. If anybody's interested in attending our meetings, we're going to move to in-person, but with a remote public participation option. Our meetings, Mike, it's the last Wednesday of the month, fourth Wednesday of the month?
Right, fourth Wednesday of the month is the Broadband Authority meeting. That's right.
Those meetings
September 28th, it'll be at the McIntyre building, which is on Preston and McIntyre. It's on the second floor in the boardroom, which is room 241.
Yep,
and
241.
If you're interested, more information, you can just send an email to baao@albemarle.org.
There it is. We should count how many times we say that email address during these webinars. But those meetings start at 5 o'clock. And so that's where you can hear from the people behind the Broadband Authority and learn more. We often do have Steve Brewer, Dolores Carroll, Nancy. I don't think Nancy's been on these yet, but Heather from Lumen on the calls to talk about and provide updates similar to this, but with a slightly different setting. This project in particular, DHCD committed $2.3 billion of state funding towards this project with Lumen. It is 10 total project areas involving over 1,600 new passings. So this was, at the time, our largest broadband project to date. Our role, the BAAO, our office serves as the public liaison. We bring residents' concerns to Lumen, to the Broadband Authority, and to DHCD. If you have any questions or concerns, you should reach out to us at baao@albemarle.org. But it's important to note that we're not merely an intermediary. You send us an email, we're not just hitting forward and sending it to somebody else. We have in our role as the administrators, a really long lens over the entire project, not dissimilar from the role that Steve Brewer plays at Lumen, not dissimilar to the role that Tammy Bresky plays at DHCD. We're looking at the whole project. We're looking at all aspects of the project. And so when you bring us your questions, we're going to think about your question in that long lens, thinking about how we can apply any aspect of this question to generalizable knowledge. So that way, if there's something that we need to change about the whole project, not just your specific request, we can be thinking about that. But it also means that we kind of have to use our consideration to determine whether this is a question that we can just answer ourselves, whether this is something that needs to be sent up to Lumen, whether this is something that is already taken care of. And so with that in mind, when there is a question or concern that's founded, it's really solid, a good question that needs to be asked, whether it's about the whole project or about an individual circumstance, we're going to pass those on to the right people, whether that's at DHCD or whether that's at Lumen. If a resident shares a question or concern, shares a question or concern that is unfounded, and there we're not talking about like, well, you know, they don't, it doesn't pertain. It could be a lot of different things, but we're going to try to inform you of why this isn't necessarily something we're going to chase up the chain. If a resident makes a request that is unwarranted or unallowable, and we talked about this last month, if you ask us for the network design, we're not going to provide it. And, you know, I will let you know that we're not going to provide it, but I'm not going to ask Lumen to tell me that it's not going to be provided. If you want the cell phone number for the field supervisor, we're not going to provide it. And we're not going to pass that one up the chain either. Those are the sorts of things where either it's proprietary business information or it's asking that your immediate concerns be the purview of somebody who needs to be taking that long lens view. It's taken away from the work that needs to be done to look at one aspect. We will handle that one aspect, and we'll handle making sure that your aspect gets addressed. So this does not mean you shouldn't share your concerns. If you have a concern, please reach out to us. And it does not mean that we're asking you to have, it does mean, however, that we're asking you to have trust in our answers. So when you reach out to us, if we give you an answer, if we tell you, well, this isn't actually something that we need to worry about, or we tell you this isn't something that we're going to push further, trust that we're bringing it, we're giving you that for a reason. And I will be upfront. We make mistakes. When we do, we apologize, and we work to make sure we don't make that mistake again. In the VATI 2020 project, communication was one of the biggest mistakes. We didn't have enough of it. Now, as you can see, 10 hours of webinars. We've upped our game when it comes to communication. We've upped our game when it comes to answering questions, getting people the responses that they need. And so we're not making that mistake again. We're going to try to correct any mistakes that we do make. With that in mind, one of the things that we did early on is that we gave people a lot of hope and determination on launch dates. We projected them far out, and we posted them. We told people about them, and to a certain extent, we weren't taking into account the real likelihood that sometimes things get in the way and things slip. And so one of the things that we've done, and you'll see more of this later, is that when we have any reason to be concerned about a launch date, we've moved it to TBD, to be determined. So we're going to talk about delayed project areas. Milton Hills and the first Taylor's Gap tranche, that was the one called Taylor's Gap, they continue to experience delays. These delays are associated with equipment failures, geologic features, and weather. Crews are continuing to work in these areas. If you guys live in those areas, you've seen it. Those crews are out there. Lumen has done their best to encourage their subcontractors to add crews, get more equipment, get more stuff in order to make sure that these projects keep advancing, even as these delays have continued. The Rosemont tranche, that area is delayed because of some shared private utilities that are getting marked. So that way, work can continue without risk that somebody's water line is going to get cut. To prevent this issue, and this is for everybody in the upcoming project areas, we are going to be reaching out to your HOAs. If you don't have a HOA, but you know that there are shared private utilities, especially along the roadway, but even if you've got shared private utilities that are running in the backfields between your houses, reach out to us, let us know, because what we want to be able to do is, as construction is happening, typically you guys aren't worried about marking private utilities, but if they're shared private utilities that are going to be in the same space that the fiber is going to be run, then we need to know about it. We need to share that information with Lumen, and that way those utilities, shared private utilities, can get marked, and then nobody's water line gets cut, nobody's whatever type of infrastructure gets cut. So that's something that we're going to be working towards in the future. But again, if you're part of a HOA, reach out to us, and we will make sure that we can get connected to find out whether that's an issue in your neighborhood. It might not be, but if you know it's an issue, also reach out to us. Installation delays at last count, and I'll let Steve update us if we've got an update. There were 29 households where service has been requested, but the installation has not yet occurred. We are continuing to monitor this. Obviously, this is a problem that dates back a while. It includes issues with the ordering system that have since been resolved, but it also involves those issues that we've talked about already about the availability of a crew, the availability of equipment, the availability the presence of geologic features. And when we're talking about geologic features, again, if you've got a rock shelf on your property, that might get in the way. If you know that there's a rock shelf, if you know that there's, you dig 4 inches down and you hit bedrock, those are the sorts of things that it's helpful to share with us at any point in time. And that way we can make sure that Lumen is aware. If they know that this particular area is going to be really tough to get through, they can try to work around that, but it's better to know it early. Lumen has committed to hiring additional installation techs. This is a big deal. This is something that we're really, really hopeful is going to help move things along, get those 29 people connected, but also put us in a better position as other project areas launch. Lumen has also committed to clearer communications when appointments are missed. Now, this is part of the work that Mike and I do week in and week out of monitoring all of these outages, is when we hear about something, our preference is that we don't hear from the resident, it's that we hear from Lumen. But often we hear from the resident and we hear that Lumen hasn't reached out. And so we're working with Lumen to make sure that going forward, people get clear communication from Lumen about these sorts of things. If you have a scheduled installation, if it's missed and you don't hear anything from Lumen, reach out to us. Reach out to us and let us know, and we will make sure that Lumen is aware and has an opportunity to give us an update. And I wanted to back up to, which one did I want? This one. So these project areas that have been delayed, if you're in those project areas, if you have received an email because you provided it to Lumen that says, hey, you can put your order in, we're going to ask that you wait. Our preference is that you wait until you hear from us that everything's go. And the reason that I ask that is when you place your order before the project area has launched, then your order might sit for a little while and isn't going to get acted on until your project area has launched. Our preference is if you wait, then that means that when your project area launches and you put in your order, it's going to be able to be acted upon right away. So if you live in the Taylor's Gap area, if you live in Milton Hills, if you've received word, hey, you can place your order from Quantum, just hold off a little while. If you're on our email list, then we will make sure that to send you an email saying, hey, Milton Hills has launched, Taylor's Gap has launched, and then you can go ahead and get on. If you're not on our email list, if you manage to get here, but you're not actually on our email list, reach out to us, BAAO. We're going to send you a link. You fill out a quick survey and you'll be on our email list. And in that form that you fill out, you'll tell us which project area you are. So that way we can target our emails to you exactly when it's your turn. So that is a quick aside. The other thing that we want to talk about are fiber drop charges. At last month's meeting, Lumen announced their intentions to begin charging for line extensions. Line extensions is another way of saying your fiber drop. The policy stated during the meeting differed from the agreement between Lumen, ABBA, and DHCD. They will be honoring our agreement. That agreement, if you recall, is 650 feet. If you're past 650 feet, then it's possible you're going to be charged some line extension costs. In the event that your line extension will entail additional charges, you will be informed about that prior to work beginning. So moving forward, the policy is what it used to be, 650 feet. We're going to update things on some slides and make sure that everybody's aware. But for Steve, I do have a question, and it's related actually to some of the questions that we already see coming in. We have an expectation that come October, there's going to be a transition of these assets of Lumen to Brightspeed, the new company that's bought these assets. Can we expect, especially as it relates to these fiber drops, but other policies, that there are going to be some changes in these policies going forward from that point?
Thank you, Jason. Yes, on October 3rd will be day one of Brightspeed. The question of fiber drops is currently being discussed by the Brightspeed executive leadership team. Matter of fact, there's quite a bit of discussion about it yesterday. And is there some chance that the policy could differ from what Lumen or CenturyLink's current policy is? Yes. I wish I had a definitive answer for you as I sit at this moment. I do not, but I expect that to be forthcoming in the very, very near future.
Appreciate that. And as always, our next webinar after this one is October 6th. So that'll be after that date. However, if we have updates to share prior, if on October 3rd, there's a whole list of changes that are going to be happening moving forward, we will send those out. We will share that with everybody on our email list, and then we'll make sure to discuss those changes on the next webinar. With that,
Jason,
Mike.
I think it might be valuable if we pick up the Brightspeed questions that are in the chat. And Jody Joy has asked a good one, and this is for Steve, and I think the answer is no. But will the changeover cause delays? So we've heard Brightspeed is coming. Will the changeover cause any delays, Steve?
No, I don't expect any delays whatsoever. The personnel that are building out the project, there will be no change there. All of us that are on the call with you today, we will be conveying over to Brightspeed. October 3rd will also be day one for us as Brightspeed employees, as well as the vast majority of the team involved in the project. So no, I don't expect that transition to cause any delays at all. Okay. We are likely to see on day one customers still using the Quantum Fiber site in order to sign up, but we expect that to be rebranded in very short order. And of course, we will keep you apprised of that situation so that you can communicate it on your website and through your emails as well.
So any contracted work, the switchover from CenturyLink Lumen to Quantum to Brightspeed, and any subcontractor work, we feel those are being handled as we speak. So we're not going to lose any of the subcontractors that are working.
No,
okay.
Not at all.
Okay. And then I think
the next question we'll handle when we get to that point so Nancy's we're gonna throw it over to Nancy now. And when we get to this, the question that Mike's alluding to in the presentation, we will take a quick pause to discuss that question. So Dan, thanks for the question. We will get to it in just a minute. And again, as always, everybody else, please, if you've got a question, if something comes up while you're listening, throw it into the chat, and we will into the Q&A, and we will discuss it. So with that, Nancy.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to go to the next slide? So I think you all understand now that we are transitioning. This particular fiber project is going from CenturyLink to Quantum Fiber, and then in October, we're actually going to Brightspeed. So we're undergoing quite a few changes, but as Steve mentioned, our folks that are right there local, that are placing the cable and splicing it, those are all going to be the same when we transition from Quantum Fiber to Brightspeed. And we don't know, we have not been instructed for sure if on day one, which is October 3rd, everything will be rebranded to Brightspeed, or if you'll still see Quantum Fiber. As soon as we can answer that, we can let you know. Next slide. So this is the work schedule. The installation dates are still pending for some of those areas. We've turned up a few, as you can see, the ones in green, excuse me, we have turned up, and the last 3 on the bottom arrow are still pending. Excuse me. Next slide. These are the estimated dates, and we have updated some of the dates on here to be determined. And that is, as Jason explained earlier, we have had some delays in some of the areas and getting everything launched due to weather and materials. Next slide. So when you're actually ready to order fiber internet through Lumen or Quantum Fiber, I just kind of want to walk you through that process. But first, I want to talk to you a little bit about the benefits of fiber internet. So fiber optic internet uses light pulsing through special glass cables to move information at nearly the speed of light. It's an ultra fast broadband connection with enough speed to handle all your devices simultaneously, or it can power your small business software with minimal slowdowns. When you think about it, most houses today have lots of connected devices. You might have your mobile phone, tablets, gaming devices, TVs, even your refrigerators can be connected to the internet. So Quantum Fiber Internet allows you to connect all those devices to play games, stream shows, or chat online with no data caps. Excuse me just a second. Allergy season for me. So fiber provides that scalable, reliable internet connection. If you have service in the Grant area today, then you're probably under the CenturyLink brand. Quantum Fiber is our latest new fiber product using next generation systems for fiber ordering and inventory system, along with this new digital platform under the Lumen umbrella of products. So Quantum Fiber offers a fully digital online experience. You'll place your order online. No need to call an 800 number. You'll simply go to q.com, www.q.com. So as we're placing fiber optic cables to the houses now in the Grant area, as we complete the construction work, we'll roll out the fiber internet in a phased approach, which you kind of saw earlier. We talked about how the different areas are turning up at different times. So you'll again be notified when your home is ready to order fiber internet. So if your address isn't quite ready for fiber internet, you can still enter your name to be notified at q.com, and we'll show you that in a few more slides. Quantum Fiber is a prepay platform, so you will need an email address and a credit card to place your order. And because this is fiber-based internet, your home will need a fiber drop. That's the drop that brings the fiber into your house. Initially, we've set it up so that you're given a 10 business day due date. That's to give us time to do a site visit to your address. We have to take measurements for the drop and then allow time for our third-party contractor to bury the drop. When we install fiber internet, it also will require a technician to come to your house. So someone 18 years of age or older needs to be home at the time of the installation too. Next slide. Go ahead and talk about, oops. Again, this is the site that you're going to go to, www.q.com, and you're going to use that blue box that says check availability. And the next slide shows the next step, which is where you're going to enter your address, and then you'll select check availability, and you'll go to the next slide. And this is where you'll choose your speed. So we have 2 options, 200 meg or 940. So you just click on whichever box for the speed that you want, and then you select continue at the bottom of the screen. On the next slide, this is where you can bring your own modem, but the modem that we are offering is at no additional charge. So at this time, it's free. So if you just click on that box and then select continue, you'll go to the next slide, which this is where the system is kind of checking your address. We're going to see what the next available due date is. So you'll see this screen or screen similar to this, and then the next slide will show you when we come back, or you can move forward to the next slide. So it'll come back with the next available due date. So you can't pick a sooner due date, but you could pick farther out. So if the first due date that shows up doesn't work for you, you can click on that calendar and select another time. You will need to fill in your email address and your phone number, and then review the available information in the box under or in the little section under the big box. Once you've done all that, you'll be able to select continue and go to the next slide. And this again is just a review of your order. It's giving you, the speed that you ordered, what your monthly bill will be. And I just want to remind you, at any time that you're in the Quantum Fiber website, you can always click on there's a little chat in the lower right-hand corner. So if you're having trouble, you can click to chat with an agent at any time. So on the next slide, this is where you'll enter your payment information, but it also gives you a kind of a recap of your order, the address that you put in, the speed that you've selected. So after you enter your payment information, you'll select continue and get to the next slide, and you'll get this confirmation page that says, thank you for ordering Quantum Fiber. The next page is an example of a confirmation email. So that's why, we want to have your email, because we will correspond with you with email. So you'll get an email that says, thank you. This is your order confirmation. And then on the next slide, if you're an existing customer, the only difference between an existing and a new is at that very first page where you put in your address. If you're an existing customer, you want to click yes, where it says if you are currently a CenturyLink customer. That way, one of our agents will contact you in a few days to coordinate the removal of your CenturyLink service. So if you have DSL today on copper and you're ordering fiber internet through Quantum Fiber, this will flag your account, and what we call our fiber success team will monitors these, and they'll contact you to coordinate the disconnection or the removal of your copper HSI or high-speed internet, so that when you go to the fiber, that's all you'll have is fiber internet.
Now, Nancy, this is where we wanted to address one of our residents' questions. So Dan's question is, emails have gone out to CenturyLink customers that they will become Brightspeed customers. And if there's any Quantum customers on the line, if anybody that's already been connected is still coming to these webinars, first, thank you for coming. They will also be able to note that Quantum customers have also received these emails. How then should Brightspeed customers answer this question when signing up for Lumen Fiber? Are you currently a CenturyLink customer? Is no the correct answer. First part is easy. You are not currently a Brightspeed customer. October 3rd is the launch date expected. And so on October 3rd is when you are now a Brightspeed customer. So if you're placing your order right now, then you're still a CenturyLink customer. But Nancy or Steve, do you guys want to discuss it? I know, Nancy, you said, we don't know when a Brightspeed site will be up for people to sign up, and we will obviously update everybody when that day comes. But if it's still the Quantum site, is yes the correct answer to, are you currently a CenturyLink customer?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So this will still apply, and one of the reasons we like to post these videos and these slides up on our website is because that is the current information. Until you see something different, either on this webinar, in one of the emails that we send you, or on the slides that are posted on the website, that this is the current information. So Dan, thanks for the question.
Okay, so if you happen to be in Quantum Fiber and you get a message that says we're not available at your address yet, you can select to be notified. So if you select to the right side of that big box, you'll notice it says you can notify me. So if you select that and then hit enter, you'll get a slide where you can actually, or the next page, where you can actually put in your contact information. So once you enter that contact information and select the stay up to date button, you'll go to the next, or at the next slide, you'll see the message that says you're on the list. So you'll receive confirmation from Quantum Fiber. And again, depending on when you do this and when your area is ready, the confirmation email may come back as Quantum Fiber, or it could come back as Brightspeed. We do anticipate that the communication you get starting October 3rd will be branded Brightspeed. So any emails that come back to you, because they have emails already ready, I'm just not sure that the site itself, if it will say Quantum Fiber or Brightspeed, but we'll get that clarified. And the next slide is, if you're interested in a voice product, with this platform, it is a little bit different. You do have to have your internet installed before you can order connected voice on the Quantum Fiber platform. So after your service is installed, you'll go back to Quantum Fiber, and under our shopping, you can select under that category and you'll get connected voice, and then you'll select the blue button at the bottom and go to the next slide. Here you'll be able to select adding voice. At this point, you would be an existing Quantum Fiber customer when you're adding voice. So you select the residential, click the blue button, and then your order will go from there. So the next slide, there is some information on the Quantum Fiber website, which is already, it's open, it's up and out there. If you have questions, feel free to go to Quantum Fiber or q.com now. You can get information about the fiber. If you go to the next slide, we even have information out there about the equipment, some frequently asked questions. There's a support page. So there's quite a bit of information available today if you have any questions about going to Quantum Fiber Internet. The next page, I think, just shows some of the equipment. Again, it's under the support pages, and you can find information about equipment and modems. And the next page, I think,
where we get to our FAQs.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna swing us over. So one spot on our FAQs. Here we are. So this question here: are there extra charges to install fiber drop to my home? If additional charges apply, they will be communicated with you prior to placement of the fiber drop. So a little vague language. It is obviously something that we're going to expand on as we move forward. And so if just know that whatever the circumstances are, if there's a fiber, if there's a charge associated with your fiber drop, you will hear about it before any work begins. And if you have questions about it, reach out to us. But the expectation per the contract now is 650 feet. So we will look into that as we move forward. A lot of questions coming in. I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about some of the questions that came in ahead of time. And we're going to start with questions about construction. In particular, questions about what happens after the construction is over and the property needs to be restored. So from somebody in the Rosemont area, some of our roads are very hilly, very steep, and have drainage swales, ditches, culverts for water runoff. If we find that a drain area or a swale was disturbed and not put back exactly as it should be, whom do we contact to have it fixed? And then another one from the same area. What if we discover the culverts have been damaged? What about damage to the tarmac at the end of a driveway? So I'm going to I'm going to say who you contact first. I'm going to say what the expectation is, and then I'm going to throw it to Steve to make sure that we've got that right and that we're all clear. You should contact us, baao@albemarle.org, if you see that the property has not been restored. Now, they're going to make all reasonable efforts to restore the property. If they haven't made all reasonable efforts, simple stuff, complex stuff, if you see that they didn't throw straw and seed down, if you see that they left a big ditch somewhere that there shouldn't be a big ditch, for one thing, consider giving it a little bit of time, just because the crew that is going to be throwing that straw and seed is also the crew that's probably just 100 feet down the road that's trying to keep digging these holes. And so reach out to us if something hasn't been restored, and the expectation is to restore property to the state that it was in before they started digging, with all reasonable measures. Steve, is that about right?
I would agree with everything you said there, Jason. Certainly, communicating with your office, who obviously has very open lines of communication with us, and we will do what's necessary to resolve the matter.
And I want to say that also extends to once you've had your fiber drop. If you've got a fiber drop, if there's something wrong with the way that fiber drop went, if there's something wrong with the way that your property was restored or not, reach out to us and we will do our best to make sure that Lumen has the information and that they're able to reach out to you and remedy the situation. Another one related to construction, and this is one that again is actually, it's covered in our questions in our FAQ. There it is. The question: one empty parcel will be building sometime within the next year. What should or can the owner do to be sure fiber optic will be available when she does build? So we're gonna go high level and then come down. From a high level, what is happening when they're building these fiber networks is that they're running fiber along the road sufficient to serve the community that they're building in. The contract kind of lays out what the expectations are, how much is going to be out there, and the contract also, as part of the contract, and mind you, this is over a year ago now. This is in 2021. A whole list of parcels were put together to be included in the project. The parcels that could be included were parcels that have an E911 address. So if you still refer to a parcel that you own as lot F or lot 23, then that's not a parcel that has an E911 address. If you can go to your GIS, to the Albemarle GIS site, and your parcel has an E911 address, then it's possible that it was included. Reach out to us, baao@albemarle.org. We'll reach out to Lumen. And if it's something that either it was already included or it's possible to sort of provision the network to make sure that it's ready for you. And what that means is that they're going to have a spot somewhere nearby. They're going to have enough fiber. They're going to have enough infrastructure in place ready to go to serve that facility. If you don't have an E911 address, you should still reach out to us. The expectation is going to be, though, that once you have an E911 address, that is the point that Lumen is going to start, or Lumen Brightspeed is going to start to work with you to get you service to that address. At that point, you might not be part of the project anymore. But if you're building a year from now, I hope that we're not still having these meetings. But you will be included.
You're absolutely correct. The network was planned and constructed in such a way to take into consideration parcels, as you call them. So including those or providing service to those locations should not be an issue when someone does build there.
Yep. So we're anytime that you've got that question, if you're planning on building or if you're planning on buying and you know that there's no structure there, just reach out to us and we can reach out to Lumen and they can check. And that's going to be true in the future too. So if it's 6 months down the road, a year down the road, you know that we're still going to be here. You can reach out to us and we can do the work to get you connected. We're going to talk about installations now. And this is another one where I know that this is something that we've been talking about and we've been considering. And it's got to do with the order of installations. And I'm going to pull up this slide for a reason. So the question is, can you give us an idea of the order in which the installations to each home will occur in each subdivision? In other words, is it likely that the installation will begin closest to Dick Woods Road and go street by street? So this is in particular talking about that Taylor's Gap area where it's along Dick Woods Road. And then you've got all these little roads coming off of Dick Woods Road. And is it just going to start on one end and go to the other for the installations? And I pull up this slide because that last bullet again, causes for delays can be equipment availability, crew availability, geologic features, and weather. One of the first things, Nancy covered this just a little while ago, that's going to happen is a buried site check. So somebody's actually going to come to your property and they're going to say, where is the box that I need to connect to? Where is the house that I need to connect to, the structure that I need to connect to? And how am I going to get there? If the tech is standing there at your driveway and he can see the box he needs to connect and he can see your house and it's not a big distance, then that's going to be a pretty easy one. That's going to be a crew. That's going to look a lot different than if he's standing at your driveway and he can see neither the box nor your house. And the reason I bring that up, if you've got a small run, then you're going to get one crew. If you've got a really big run, or you've got a run that's going to have to go under a road, under some sidewalk, across some driveways, then that's going to be a different crew. And availability of equipment and availability of crews is going to have an impact on your different installations. So there's no cut and dried. Well, they start at one end and then they go to the other, or they just start with first come, first serve. It has to be based on the availability of different crews with different equipment. So if you have a cluster of houses that have all put in orders that are going to be really short runs, then you might see them get knocked out really quickly all in the same day. If you've got one that's going to take, it might take a couple of days, it might take more than a few days, then that's going to, that crew is going to need to make sure that they've got the time, they've got the equipment, and they've got the staff to get that job done. So we wish that we could give you a clear, like, this is the order. It has to do with so many different factors that there's no clear pathway. Anything I miss on that one, Steve?
No, I think you did a nice job there. And Jason, I'm starting to wonder if you had a former career in broadcasting. I mean, you handle these meetings very, very well. But Jason, at such a time when all of these homes are built out, all of the orders have been placed, and then subsequently, down the road several months from now, the customer who has not subscribed early on places an order. It would certainly fall into a first come, first serve type category, but the arrangement that we're going through now with many orders being placed at the same time, we're doing everything we can to deploy those as efficiently as possible, largely like you just discussed.
Absolutely. And extending on the installation and thinking in particular about the buried site inspection, we've got a question about trees. Will the buried site inspection be amenable to going around or away from specimen trees or other special landscape items between the street and the house? Now, Steve, my understanding is that it would be your all's preference that there would be a 30-foot wide grassy path between every GPON and everybody's house. And that you guys don't mind going around because you don't want to go near those trees or gardens or rose bushes.
Yes, and really that's the reason for the buried site, or the buried site check, when the technician comes out to determine the best and least disruptive path available. And typically when these drops are buried, quite frankly, it's using a machine that really puts a very small slit in the ground and puts the fiber down in an appropriate depth. And in a very short period of time, after it's rained a bit, that slit just disappears. I mean, I've had it done in my yard. But yeah, I mean, certainly that is the reason for the technician coming out to determine, if you will, the path of least resistance and the most efficient way to do this. So certainly, those items would be taken into consideration. But if there is something that you are specifically concerned about, and I enjoy my landscaping as well, and uniqueness of some of the plants that I have. If there's something that you are particularly worried about, please pass it along, and we'll do our best to communicate it to make sure it's not disrupted.
And the easiest way, again, to pass that along is to reach out to us. With the buried site check, you're not necessarily going to have somebody that's going to knock on your door. So if there's a particular feature that you want to protect, reach out to us, let us know about it. If there's a particular feature that they just need to know about it, reach out to us. Now we've got a couple of questions related to the work on and in the house. So does Quantum Fiber choose the point on the building it plans to bring the fiber to? Steve, I know that you guys have to choose the direction, but I imagine that when it comes to actually where it's going to come inside, it's got a lot to do with where there's existing facility to put it in, and what's convenient to the owner.
That is correct. For the most part, one would expect that those facilities would enter the house at the same location where existing facilities go into the home. Or in very close proximity, certainly.
And then in terms of work inside the home, a lot of customers in this area are going to be former DSL customers, and there might be some customers that have a distribution network already, Ethernet distributed all over their house, and so the question comes about whether Quantum is going to work to make sure that the connection comes to where it is most convenient to the resident. And here we have the description of right now, most likely a copper telephone line running into the house, running up the stairs, upstairs, and over to a bedroom where they've got their equipment set up. My understanding is, your team's not coming in to do a full distributed network across a household, but where the resident, has a reasonable desire to be accommodated about where their connection is going to be, your crews are going to work to make that happen.
Nancy, do you have any insight as to this specific situation?
Well, we are going to probably come into the same location that we did before, because that's usually where the power comes in, and that's where we'll come in. The connection comes into the house and terminates in an ONT or an optical network terminal. So the fiber terminates inside in an ONT, and then really from there, we have the ability to use wireless technology. So you may not see fiber being ran through the house like a fiber cable, because once we get it terminated in that ONT, we can use a wireless technology. Does that answer the question?
I think so. And I think that the other thing to keep in mind, and this is kind of the second part of the question, which was related to reusing equipment, and actually to Ms. Lippert's question about how does the signal come from the terminal that Lumen installs inside the house to get to the modem router. There are two components that are going to go into the house. The first is what Nancy just mentioned, is the ONT, and that is a box where on the one side, you're going to have power, and then you're going to have the actual fiber optic cable, which is this tiny little strand. And then on the other side, you've got an Ethernet port. You can take that Ethernet port and plug it into the second piece. If you take the device that Quantum provides, they're using the term modem. I like the term gateway, and that device is what's going to provide the routing. And when you think of routing, think about when you think about an old movie with an office building and a guy whose job it is to get the mail and then put it in those little tubes that send it all the way around to the different offices. That's kind of what the router is doing. It's receiving and sending traffic, but when it receives that traffic, it's saying, okay, who does this need to go to? Does this need to go to the phone, to the cell phone? Does it need to go to that laptop over there? Does it need to go to that fridge over there, to that TV? Where does it need to go? And then it sends it the right way. And then the other part of the device that they give you is the Wi-Fi access point. So it's providing Wi-Fi. Your ONT, your network terminal, connects to your router, your gateway, through Ethernet. And at that point, devices can connect, if it's possible, if it's convenient, through Ethernet, but they also can connect wirelessly. Each house is going to be different. Each circumstance is going to be different. If you need support with that, you can certainly ask Lumen. You can ask your install tech for help. If there's more, then reach out to us. It's not something that we can necessarily answer or work that we can do for you, but we can at least help you know where you can get answers that you need for how best to handle your situation. And so with that, we are going to move to our questions. Lots of great questions coming in. I'm going to try to catch some of them as they came. I've got from the Box Holly project. Will the fiber run all the way down the lane? And will this project scope include bringing the fiber right up to each house? If so, how should we deal with having the lines cross existing hardscape? It is a drive walkway that is not wet mortared. All right, so I think we've covered some of this already in terms of features. So the fiber in the street is going to go as far as it needs to go to serve all of the network nodes. From there, it depends on where those nodes are, how close they are to the different houses, and what the ideal path is going to be to get from that node to them, from that box in the street somewhere to your house. And so this is where it really is individual to each property. And the buried site check is going to try to handle that that determination. If you have a particular concern, then after you've placed your order, reach out to us and we will make sure and share your thoughts and your concerns. If you want to take pictures, you can send us pictures and we'll pass those on to Lumen so that way they can make sure that the right people have that information. Moving down, and I think that we're going to see a lot of questions on the line extensions, which is not surprising. What if Lumen does not place fiber all the way down my street? So the node is far away, and so my drop is farther than the neighbor where the fiber trunk actually passes their property. So this is kind of where we were talking earlier about there is proprietary business information that both goes into determining what the network design is, but also the network design is itself proprietary business information. What I feel comfortable saying, and I'm not privy to the network design. I'm not privy, nor is Mike, to the exact factors that go into it. The overall agreement, the contract agreement that Lumen and DHCD have, spells out what the requirements are in terms of how much network capacity is being provided. Lumen is working to meet the requirements there, and unfortunately, that does mean in rare instances that somebody's going to be outside of that 650 feet just based on trigonometry. You can't find, there's no way within an easement to place that box so that it's within 650 feet of all properties. And so unfortunately that is a reality. And that's one of the reasons that we have been kind of grateful, sorry, Steve, that they did not have capacity in their ordering system previously to put these charges in, but also one of the reasons why we want to make clear that those charges are coming now, and that those circumstances are things that they're going to try to address individually when they come up. Anything else on that, Steve?
No, I mean, I think you addressed all of that correctly. Certainly when the network is designed, it's designed to be as efficient as possible. Unfortunately, in certain circumstances, that does mean that some customers do experience drops that are greater than 650 feet. However, again, that policy may change come October 3rd, and certainly we will have that decision well in advance of October 3rd, actually honestly received an email on the issue as this meeting has been ongoing. So I think they're getting very close, and we will get that over to you just as soon as I have confirmation as to how that will proceed. But that's, as we sit today, the agreement that we signed does include anyone over 650 feet.
All right, and then touching again on more of these issues. So we've got a question: how can we let you know about a geologic feature until we know where Lumen is going to run the line into the property? So the first thing I'll say is you don't need to tell us now. If you haven't placed your order, if you don't have an install date, hold on emailing us. But once you've placed your order, once you have an install date, reach out to us. If you've got a giant property, if you've got several acres and all the ridges on that property, then obviously focus on the geologic features that are near your house. On a smaller property, if you just want to let us know that one side of your house has a steep slope, has lots of rock, let us know. And if it is relevant, then they'll let you know. But you don't necessarily need to know exactly where the fiber is going to be coming from, excuse me, to let us know that there are features that they need to be aware of. But wait until you've got your order in and then reach out to us. And now a question on to the Milton Hills delays. And in particular from Miss Joy, who's been really on top of this for her community and wants to share this in their newsletter. So she expresses concern about Lumen and the contractors are not communicating with each other well, and that concern over the Brightspeed changeover and personnel supervising this could change. So Steve, do you want to start by just addressing, Steve or Nancy, the delays in Milton Hills, and then also the concern about supervision change?
The personnel will not change. I can give you confirmation of that. Personnel will not change. Those employees will also convey over to Brightspeed on October 3rd, at the same time that all of us on the call will make the jump. So, no change, no concerns there. I will tell you, I know the contractors and the manager of regional operations and the supervisor of regional operations, they have routine meetings on this particular project. I sit in on many of those meetings, and there is a great deal of communication. One thing that we are working to improve is the communication directly with the customer when there's a need to modify the installation date. We are working with our fiber success team to reiterate the need to do that, and all the personnel involved in that process.
And I'll add again that the Milton Hills area, that Taylor's Gap tranche, we talked about the different factors that went into it. I think a great example of how this can change really quickly is if you've been with us long enough. I believe it was in January, right before that big storm. I believe there was a rock that got in the way. And so our very first project area launched late, really close to its original date that it was supposed to launch, because at the last minute, there was a rock and nobody could get by it. And rerouting, trying to go around, those sorts of changes, they require time, they require backtracking. And so we regret that Milton Hills got delayed. I know I've got a question coming up about how did we not know that something was going to launch? There's a reason why I've changed all of those dates to TBD. And that's because we don't want to give you guys wrong information. And so until I have confirmation on exactly when Milton Hills is going to launch, when Taylor's Gap's first tranche is going to launch, I'm not going to update those on our website, on our slides, or in the emails I send out to you all. And that's, again, it's because I want to make sure that we get you guys good information. We're coming up on time. I'm going to go ahead and keep going. If our guests, Steve and Nancy, can stay on a little bit longer, we're going to try to get through as many of these as we can.
Yes, and we do expect to have an update on Milton Hills in particular in the very near future. So, we'll be in touch with you guys in fairly short order there.
Perfect. Now we've got a question from Roger, who has been waiting a while. He's one of the 29 that has been waiting, and we've actually got another question that is below that that's going to cover the same ground. But he asked a really pointed question. Has Brightspeed committed to a different approach? And I guess he's asking, has Brightspeed committed to a different approach relative to Lumen?
You know, I certainly have the opportunity to meet with the Brightspeed executive leadership team on a routine basis. What I can say to you is that team is tremendously experienced and tremendously committed to delivering a great customer experience. Have they committed to a different approach? I can't say specifically yes. You know, my conversations with them have not been specific to that degree, but I will tell you that the executive leadership team that is involved is certainly very experienced in the rollout of fiber optic networks. They have done it for many years. And I will also tell you that I've been tremendously impressed with the new manager of regional operations that's recently relocated to the area. So I am, quite frankly, extraordinarily excited about the move to Brightspeed and the customer experience that Brightspeed will deliver.
Appreciate that. From a gentleman in Advanced Mills asking, when will the open items be completed? I know he's referencing both his 6-week wait, and we've got others that have been waiting longer than that. But I know, Steve, that we check in on this every week, and it's, you know, I wish I could say that you know, it is to the point of going down those list of 29 every single week and checking off what the plan and the policy is, but that would take a lot of time that we all need to be working on these projects. And so I will say, I know it's been frustrating. The number of factors that go into this, it is a lot more than even I expected when I first started at this job. And so I will just continue to say, please be patient. We're working with Lumen to get solutions. But Steve, when can we expect that backlog of 29 to be resolved?
Jason, and I'm actually happy to say I just received an update that 29 is now 26. Not a huge jump, but certainly moving in the right direction. And that those should all have install appointments, is my understanding at this time. If you're aware, or if you're one of those 26 that where the customer has requested, but the installation has not been completed, and you don't have an installation date, if you would please reach out to Jason and Mike, and they will get that over to us, and we'll work to get that corrected. But it's my understanding that all of those outstanding 26 do have installation dates on the calendar now.
Great. And on to a question about these dates. And again, I've already said my part in terms of I'm going to leave them TBD. We've done this once before. We'll do it again. We're going to leave them TBD until we have an awareness of what we're really looking at. Sometimes we get caught off guard. Obviously, with the Milton Hills area, there was a power issue that needed to be resolved. With the Taylor's Gap tranche, we were really close to the launch date at our last meeting, and unfortunately it got delayed and then delayed again. So I'm not going to say one way or another about an exact launch date until I have it firm in my hand that is what's going to happen. So again, be patient with us, and we will give you guys an update when we have something useful to share. And another one about the fiber drops, and this is again relevant, I think, to what we talked about earlier in terms of what's reasonable accommodation. If you reach out to us and you have a very elaborate koi pond that has power fed to it somewhere on your property, let us know. If you're worried that you're going to be the odd man out and you're not going to be you're going to be the one that ends up having to pay a fiber drop charge. And you want to reach out to us to try to convince Lumen to move where the fiber hut's going to be, we will not be passing those requests on. The network design is for the most part locked in for these areas. And when the location gets determined for the terminal that everybody's going to be fed off of, that isn't something that's really going to change much. And somebody might be left out. We are doing our best to make sure that that isn't going to be a big issue for anybody. But if you're the odd man out, you can reach out to us, but I will let you know that we will not be passing that request on to have the hut moved in order to accommodate you, just because that's not, one, it's not fair, because it would just start a fight. Everybody would just be like, well, let's move it closer to my house. These have been set, and there really isn't a lot of room to just move them around. Oh, somebody's just asking about the Stony Point project date. So I guess I didn't share a more clear update on those, the Stony Point and Keswick areas. That's the Campbell and Copham, and then the full length of Stony Point. What we're waiting for are breakdowns of those into smaller project areas. I've talked a lot about TBDs. When those breakdowns come out, I will include the initial projected launch dates for those areas. I will share the information that we received from Lumen. If we have reason to be concerned about those dates, you'll see me on this webinar, in emails, and on our website, talk about those concerns and move them to a TBD if we have to. So right now, Stony Point's in a TBD status to be determined. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're waiting for the breakdowns. So that way we'll know how many tranches we're going to have in Stony Point and what order those should launch in. Another question about installation work. So I think, so the question is, what should we expect on an installation tech to do on that day? Just connect to the outside wall of the house, or do work inside? If the latter, what might that work consist of? And I think we've touched on this. The big takeaway is that Lumen wants you to be online. Now, if online means building you a whole Ethernet network, that's probably going to be outside of scope. But they're going to make sure that whatever work needs to be done within reason to get you connected and online, that's the work that's going to be taking, that they're going to take on. Nancy or Steve, anything else on that?
The technician that installs your service on that day will ensure that, yeah, you have a network connection that is working. They'll do that before they leave. So again, and yeah, Jason, you're right. If you want an entire rebuild done or fiber ran throughout your house, that would be beyond the scope of what we're going to do. But we will make sure that your internet is up and running before they leave that day.
And another one from Miss Joy, and this one's to us. So people are getting confused with the various emails that have gone out from CenturyLink, Brightspeed. This is something that we've spent a lot of time considering, is how do we do outreach around this changeover? I think you can expect, as we get closer to the date, we will send out some preliminary information. A lot of it's coming from this meeting today, where we talked about that it's unclear when there will be Brightspeed assets that you will use and when everybody's bill is going to say Brightspeed, but just know that the expectation right now is on October 3rd, you will be a Brightspeed customer. The website you use to manage your service might not change yet. The bill might not change yet, but we will send something out to everybody on our list and include that information elsewhere on our website, so that way people are aware, and hopefully we can mitigate some of this confusion. How will we know where is the best placement for the modem? My current DSL line comes into our basement in a brick house. Again, we covered this a little bit. There's a lot of there's a lot of art that comes into the best place to put your everything when it comes to networking equipment. As Nancy just said, they're going to do their best to accommodate and make sure that you have an active and working and useful network connection. If there are barriers, that might be something that they can accommodate to a reasonable extent. But if the reality is that you need to have repeaters all over your house, then that's probably not something that they're going to take on. That's really outside of scope. I'm gonna, so Mr. Henley, I'm really sorry to hear that. I'm gonna send you my email address again, and clear your question. I should have said this earlier. If you've got a question that's, we want questions to be generalizable. If you've got a question that's very particular to your property, to your circumstance, reach out to us. I'm sorry to hear about that, Mr. Henley. Reach out to us. We will pass it along. I'll make sure that Steve and company sees it just after the call, but that is really disappointing to hear, and I'm sorry that that happened. A question about name changes. Will the current CenturyLink company be undergoing completely new leadership and new management, or will it be essentially the same group of people? So I guess this question is coming from the perspective of what is actually moving. And I'm going to take a shot at this, Steve, because
Okay.
I've explained this. I've explained this so many times on so many different meetings. If there are three corporate entities that are moving over, and when I say corporate entities, I'm talking about the companies, their assets, and the employees from those entities down. So those entities were two telephone companies. It's literally just your copper service, and then an entity known as CTBS, which is actually kind of the internet arm of CenturyLink in our area. Those assets are moving. Those companies are moving under new management. So there's another company out there called Brightspeed with their own CEO, their own COO, a whole bunch of management professionals there, and all of the employees that were previously working for those telephone companies or CTBS or Lumen in management over those entities are moving over to Brightspeed. So it's a lot of the ground staff, and a lot of those people like Steve and Dolores and Nancy, who've been really, really helpful in this project, and a lot of the technicians and a lot of those staff that have been really helpful over the years, they're coming with the program. With the new company, but there is new management at the top.
I would largely agree with that, Jason. Certainly, the employees of all the operating companies are transitioning over. The operating companies being who you mentioned just a moment ago, they are all moving over, as are the relationships with the contractors that are helping us with this build. And then while myself and Nancy and Dolores and Heather, we're actually not employees of the operating company. We're technically an employee of a management holding company, but some of us are also conveying, and from those companies. And in this instance, all of us that are on the call with you will be conveying over to Brightspeed. Very excited about that move. And like I said earlier, I do have the opportunity to meet with the Brightspeed executive leadership team on a routine basis. All very, very experienced individuals, and looking forward to delivering an outstanding customer experience.
Awesome. We've still got lots of questions coming in. Bear with us. For Mr. Southall in Milton Hills. So as I mentioned earlier, my preference is if you live in those areas and you've received a notification that you can put in your order, my request to you all is to wait. And the reason that I want you to wait is because I want you to have the best experience that you possibly can. And sometimes that means if you wait until after we let you know that you're ready and you can go ahead and launch, they're going to be able to act on your service sooner than they might otherwise. And you won't be disappointed, because if you get an install date that gets missed because the project hasn't actually launched yet, then we want to avoid that. In this case, it sounds like there's an install date that's actually pretty far out. And so the question is, what do I do now? And will I hold my position in the queue? And actually points out that there was actually a Lumen tech out there today that installed some of the equipment inside the house. So if you've got an install date that's in the future, and Steve gives us some good news on Monday about when Milton Hills is going to launch, then everybody might be in the clear. You're going to get your service when it's scheduled. That's our hope. But if there are further delays. And that's why I'd ask anybody that receives those emails until you hear from us, just wait a little bit. Because we don't want you to get an install date and then have it be missed. So if your install date is a ways away, then we hope that everybody's going to be able to meet that, and we'll let you all know as soon as we know. There's a question on the modem that is provided for free, and it's I will say I've brought this, Mr. Shields, thanks for the question. I brought this up before. And so I appreciate you bringing it up here. There's a discrepancy between the website Q.com offering and the reps discussion. So Nancy, you mentioned a free modem. Our understanding is that is only available on the 940 level of service. And so if you order the 200 megabits per second service and you want to rent that modem, that's going to bring you an additional $15 charge, which results in the difference between the $49 a month and the $940 being just $1. Do you want to share more on that?
That is correct. We do have a monthly fee for the modem if you're doing the lower speed of 200 meg. So yeah, the 940 speed with the modem included is your best value at $65.
Okay.
And Jason, again, October 3, jumping to Brightspeed, you may see some slight changes in pricing, such as the one described here. That's to be determined. I do know that Brightspeed intends to include the price of its modem in the overall purchase price of the service. And my expectation on the Brightspeed side is that will be for all speed tier levels. Don't know, don't have that specifically in writing or confirmed just yet, but the reason I bring this up is that too could change slightly with the jump to Brightspeed.
So we'll put a pin in it until next month. If we currently have CenturyLink copper service, why can't the new fiber run simply follow that path? So we've actually touched on this one before. And a lot of it has to do with what you're actually running. Again, we can't, I don't know, nor do I want to know absolute specifics about what equipment is going out. But the way that you can think about a fiber installation is that, well, let's compare it to a copper installation. So for a copper installation, believe it or not, if you've got a neighborhood with 500 houses, somewhere in that neighborhood, there's a big, wide conduit that is stuffed full of as many as 1,000 copper strands, copper wires that are all moving together into your neighborhood, and then they all split off in different locations to try to serve everybody. That's because your copper service needs to go all the way sort of as a whole. So your copper line really does transition. You could follow it all the way to somewhere in the network where it gets actually shunted off to another backbone. Sometimes that's fiber, sometimes it's not. When you compare that to fiber, what you're actually doing isn't all that different than what you're doing with the network in your house. So somewhere in your house, you have internet coming in. It's feeding a router. That router is then feeding all of your devices. Now, if all of your devices, when you get your fiber service, if all of your devices demanded gigabit service right now, your router would kind of pick who gets more, but it would do its best to distribute that service across all of your devices, no matter what they're asking for. That's kind of how it works for a fiber network. So outside, somewhere in your neighborhood, is a box. It's provisioned to service a certain number of homes and at a certain level of service. It doesn't have 8 times that level of service coming into it. Instead, it has enough that if you balance out everybody's requests, you should be able to provide at or near that level of service for everybody. So why doesn't the fiber run the same path as the copper? They are operating at different scales, and they're really operating in a way that it wouldn't make sense for them to run 1,000 fiber strands to service all of the houses in a neighborhood, that would be just a lot more capacity than you necessarily would expect or need. They're running it in a way that everybody's going to get the service that they need, but you're not going to have as much of that infrastructure just running around in the ground. And so that's why you don't just follow the copper path. You really are going to follow and use different equipment and different distribution methods. The last segment to the house, what is the fiber service? Sorry for flipping through it so fast. Per Mr. Henley and thanks for Mr. Henley for the question about the depth of burial for that last segment to the house. The expectation since the beginning is about 12 inches. Will voice service replace our current telephone service? We've asked this a few times before. I'm going to see if I can find the right spot. So here we're asking it as, can I keep my landline and use the fiber for internet only? If customers choose to purchase a faster internet speed, we will transition both phone and internet services to Quantum Fiber. Steve, is this still the position that if you want fiber internet, that eventually your copper telephone line is going to go away?
So, Jason, I would expect at some point in the future, there's no rush to abandon the copper network, but I would anticipate at some point in the future there will be a complete transition over to fiber. As you can imagine, it's extraordinarily costly to maintain two networks, and quite honestly, the reliability of the fiber network is so much greater than that of the copper network. It certainly makes sense to have everyone move all of their services over to the fiber network. And quite frank, and I'd like to mention, that's really the industry norm. That's not merely a Lumen or Brightspeed position, but that's the industry norm. To basically, we're finding ourselves, particularly with all of the grant dollars out there, in a situation where we're trying to overbuild as much of the copper network as possible. And one day, there's no timeline in mind that I'm aware of, but one day I do expect the copper network to ultimately be retired. But again, that there's no hard fast deadline, or there's no rush to do that. Certainly, we need to get the the fiber network built out, get customers transitioned and tested, and well before anything like that would take place. And when that time comes, there would certainly be ample notice provided by the respective companies that do that. And again, I think we're going to see that nationally.
Awesome. I've got two questions left. The first one I'm going to go ahead and take on, because it's got to do with the network distribution that we just talked about, the difference between copper and the difference between fiber. So when you're looking at copper internet, distance is the determiner. If you live if there's a DSLAM on your property, your internet's probably good. You probably weren't included in this project. If you're farther away from a DSLAM, in particular, if you're really far away from a DSLAM, that's the actual hub where your copper wire is coming, then your internet's going to be a lot slower. That is not the case on fiber. Fiber, the distances are tremendous in terms of maintaining speed. So if your house is 2,500 feet from where the node is going to be, you're not going to see speed degradation because of that distance. This is actually another good question related to actually what's on the screen. So from Forrest, the telephone over copper lines typically continue to work for 3 days if there's a prolonged power outage. How long will internet or phone service last in a power outage? So as you see, if you have internet, if you rely on your phone, if you rely on your internet connection for your phone, we would advise that you get a UPS, an uninterruptible power supply. Lumen does have some available. When you order Quantum Fiber, has some available when you order your service. You can add that as an accessory, whether you do it through them or you do your own research and order one. We recommend that you do that and that you connect at least your ONT your fiber your gateway, so your router, and a phone. And whatever, if there's a device associated with your VoIP service, then you got to make sure that's connected to your UPS. That will allow your phone and internet to work for a while. That X of time there is related to how big your uninterruptible power supply is and how long your outage is. Obviously, that is a lot of unknowns, but fiber service is not the same as copper service, where electricity is actually being pumped through the lines. There's no electricity coming through that fiber, and so you have to provide it at the end point. That is definitely something that we as an office worry about when it comes to making sure that people have access to emergency services. In January, when we had a very, very large and extended power outage throughout lots of the county, I will say Lumen worked with us to make sure, and actually several other providers that were impacted, to get generators out to where they were needed to not just get internet service back up, but also get telephone service back up where it was needed. And so that is something that is still of concern for us and that we're working to resolve at a systems level, at a county level. And then last one from Mr. Greenbaum again. I don't think I made my question very clear, though. I was simply asking why the new fiber line on my property. I'm sorry, sir. So you were mentioning actually following the same path as your current DSL line. The reason that it's not necessarily going to follow that same path is because it might be coming from a different direction. If the node that's going to feed your fiber to your house is in the same general direction as where your DSLAM is, then it might follow that same path. You might not want it to, but it could, or at least come close to following that same path. But if it's possible that the node that you're going to be served from, it could be at the next road over. It could be in somebody else's backyard. And so it's going to come in whatever direction that the node is on its way to get to your house. With that, thank you all so much. Charlie, I think you already asked your question in the Q&A, but if you've got another one, you can throw it in right now. Otherwise, I want to thank you all for an epic 1.5 hour long 10th meeting. That's the longest one we've had so far. I really appreciate, we had over 40 people on the call at one point, all the questions that have been coming in. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Dolores. Thanks, Mike. And if anybody else has any questions, as always, baao@albemarle.org.
Great job, Jason. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, folks. Take care.
Thanks so much.
I'm stopping the recording. All right, now I'll